No offside.
No Offside Podcast is proud to partner with Lightning Rod Energy. Improve your performance, enhance your focus, sustain energy. What are you waiting for? Use code Offsides when you order online for a 10% discount. 43 Degree Sports. Join the revolution for clean gear. This bag kills bacteria and dries your gear. Don't be the smelly team in anymore. Use code No Offsides Podcast for free shipping. Chupacabra Sports. Order custom uniforms and team gear. Get all branding and logo design services from Chupacabra Sports. Buy 11 uniforms, get the 12th free when you mention No Offsides Podcast. Welcome to Season 4 of No Offsides Podcast. If you're new to watching or listening, I'm Dan Dean. Today's guest is the face of a large and growing travel organization that has existed for 25 years. He runs the day-to-day in all the divisions of the Eastern region. He is the East Coast Region Coordinator for the Professional Inline Hockey Association. I want to give a warm welcome to Anthony Flynn. How are you, Anthony?
Hey, Dan, thanks so much. And if I'm the face for anything, somebody's in trouble. I'll tell you that.
Well, we can't have Chris as the face, so that would be worse. So, but I mean, you are pretty much you're the go-to guy on the East Coast.
Yeah, and that's about to change. That's actually a conversation I just had with the Yoders yesterday, but
okay,
we can get on that as we go on. They just asked me to move on to they asked me just yesterday to be the commissioner starting next year, so for the whole league. So that's as long as we can square things up and I can find the time to do it. This is a labor of love that I've been doing for many years. So
yeah. Well, I mean, how many years have you been participating and helping and working for PIHA?
Well, I was a player when we started, way back when I had hair. I mean, the league started in 2002, and I was a player in 2002. So, 2002, I played for one of the inaugural franchises, after that, the next year we started our club, and we ran that for 6 years. And the only thing that stopped our club from running was I kind of got poached to go to run Skate Safe America in Long Island. So that kind of ended, and that happened in 2008. And a lot of things happened in 2008. If you want to dive into that, there was a big PIHA split back then. So, but even when I was running my club, the Growl, back in starting in 2003, all the way until we stopped in 2008, I started to take on a leadership role pretty quickly, and it really began when we won the league 2 years in a row. We won in 2005 and 2006, and famously in 2006 is when CJ Yoder moved from the East Coast to Colorado, where he still is today, and the league expanded there. And when we had won in 2005, it was still kind of the league was still kind of in its infancy, and it was great. The level of talent was so incredible then. It was really compacted. There were so many really good guys on each team, and then when CJ moved the next year, it was just kind of opened up everyone's eyes, like, man, we need to expand this thing, and I kind of really got my hands dirty from that perspective. I wasn't officially. I mean, I think I've been the webmaster for the longest damn time, but even going back to then, I think around 2005, I kind of took it over. But as far as working for PIHA itself, it wasn't really until I came back from Long Island and I tried to mend the bridges that I was a big part of breaking. When we tried to bring the AIHL and the PIHA back together, and right after that, and I bought Marple Sports Arena, and I've been working for Charlie ever since, Charlie and CJ ever since, and that was mostly because Charlie decided to pick up move at the Colorado with CJ. So, he kind of needed somebody out here, but, this has always been really a labor of love for me. But at the same time, like, I feel like I'm one of the old, you probably count on, just a couple of hands, the amount of people who really made a living, and a good living out of roller hockey. I mean, so many of us loved it. But, there's only probably a handful of people who are fortunate enough to have really turned it into something. And that's something I think we all want, right? You want to do what you love. And I've been doing that for years now. And I consider myself very, very lucky to have done that. It kind of started with PIHA. I mean, that's where I, got a name for myself in roller hockey, outside of the region. And people started to kind of notice me as an organizer, and um, I feel now indebted to it, because everything I now have is because I can connect the dots, or
Sure.
the rungs of the ladder down to where that started, and it was PIHA. I don't make any kind of major money running PIHA. It's enough to just kind of cover the expenses of what I'm doing. I would probably make more money at my own business if I spent the time focused on my own business, but I feel kind of indebted to it,
Sure.
and it's 100%, a pet project, that we've been working on for years. And I really genuinely do like the Yoders, and Charlie's like a second dad to me sometimes. So and I love the people.
Yeah.
Dan, it's just
Oh,
it's this sport is a people thing. You know what I mean?
for
You
sure.
go to a tournament, and it's just like these could be people that you did major battle with at some
Yeah.
point, but there's a brohood in hockey, and I'm definitely infected by it. So
Oh yeah. I mean, it's you can go to a tournament and it's great, and you can, but like going to a PIHA weekend, at least to myself, it means more because there's something on the line, right? You go to a tournament, and even if it's like a small tournament or even a bigger one, it's you go there, you want to win, you get knocked out, but like you're only playing 3 or 4 games in that tournament, whereas in PIHA you're playing 20-game regular season to
yeah,
try and especially depending if you, like the size of your division and stuff like that. Like I know like the eastern the northeast divisions have gotten bigger over the past couple years. And so like the southeast I started to get a little bigger, and so we went from 4 teams making the playoffs to 5. So like going in being like the goal is not to be that 5th seed or the 4th seed, but like to secure yourself a spot to the semifinals, right? So it just to me it means a lot more
well, I
going
promise
to a
you this,
tournament.
Dan. When you get to Colorado, no matter what team you are, that becomes your goal again the
Sure.
next year. And I know that from talking to teams that were there for the first time last year. That's all they talk about
Yeah.
is it's obviously everybody wants to be the grand champion, but I promise you, when you get to the championships, that becomes your goal. So the unique thing about PIHA, and you touched on it, is that it's not a weekend tournament, and I don't equate the level of PIHA to a Narch Pro, or
Sure.
tours, or state wars. The Palma Pro can probably be in the best, I guess. I don't know, but what I will say is that's a tournament for a weekend, a long weekend,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic to watch. I'm not crapping on it at all. I think it's fantastic. It's just we're sitting in a different space. We're sitting in a space where it's like this is a commitment space, and
Yeah.
as a team operator, and anytime there's a new team that comes on the PIHA, I try to explain that to you. There's a commitment here that you need to get, from players, and understand that it's different. It just hits different when you win at the end, because it's a journey. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not a sprint. You know what I mean? It's like winning a real championship.
Yeah.
Because you're months on to this. Several trips, different places, and then if you're lucky enough to get out of your division, or talented enough, or whatever the case is, then you got to go face the rest of the country that
Yeah.
way. And that to me is why I've always been passionate about. And it's getting, I'm not, like I said, throwing digs at anything else, because there's space in this sport for all kinds of stuff. And I love it. But that's always been why I've loved it, is because for me, watching, you know, it's not just about the talent too. It's about the organization, and about making sure guys show up, and you guys are just getting ready for playoffs now. So
Yeah. Well, and I can say from a team owner perspective that the league is very dedicated, and also, they want the week before. And I mean, I was vetted. I got a phone call from CJ himself going, "How dedicated are you to like this commitment that you're going to possibly be traveling, and like your division's going to have probably one of the most traveling like distance in traveling. Like, can you get guys to do this?" And I was like, I'll get back to you.
yeah,
So,
for
you
sure.
know, and so, and then just so happened that it worked out, got guys, and
Well, we had such a good group in that southeast
Yeah.
area, and as we expand in other areas, sometimes it works out good, and sometimes it doesn't. Like, you know, we've had our struggles in Florida this year, and we have some great people down there, but it's been a little bit of a struggle down there.
Yeah.
But the group is bought in, as that group of five that we put that southeast together division with last year.
Yeah.
So even, you
I
know,
mean, that's the crazy thing though is like as a new division and having getting a chance to play them, they are a very competitive group. I mean, even their bottom team, which I think they've had their struggles with commitment, but they still were very competitive and put up a fight against us. I mean,
well,
although
we've known for a long time that Florida was untapped. The problem with Florida is just there's no rinks.
yeah,
These are people that are playing mostly outdoors in
hmm
covered spaces, and fortunately, I know there's a new rink that never came online, and it caused us all kinds of problems this year. And when you're starting a new division, you don't want a whole lot of unforeseen bumps, because you're going to get bumps,
yeah,
naturally. But we had a lot of challenges down this year, and I give the guys that hung on a lot of credit. And I think whoever comes out of that division is going to be, a team that you're going to have to deal with, much like yours.
yeah,
I think much like yours. So, and that's been the great thing is that last year when the mops came in both divisions, there's this arrogance, I'm going to say, in the Northeast about that, in PIHA, that they kind of controlled the league, and their eyes were wide open,
yeah.
when all of a sudden they saw these teams like, whoa, okay, these aren't pushover teams, and obviously it's all in the history books now. But yeah, and I expect whoever comes out of there this year to be equally as talented. And me personally, I think it's good for the league when
Sure.
someone from the Northeast doesn't win, even though I kind of, that's my territory, and I'm not on the record as saying that I'm not rooting for him, but you know, I'm a league guy. I'm gonna be a commissioner next year now,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I gotta
Well,
gotta toe the line.
well, before we get into the commissioner role, I mean, let's talk about what it is to be the East Coast coordinator. I mean, what in your job for PIHA, what do you expected to do?
Well, I mean, first is obviously it's the recruitment of the teams, being the contact person for people who want to play. And then the tough part of that is making sure the expectation is set, like you had talked about. Like when you're coming in, teams know what to expect. It's then it is, you know, all right, what do we have? Okay, here's our list of teams. How are we going to break it up? And what rinks are working with us? And that really is that's the toughest part of the job is contacting you know a dozen and a half, 2 dozen rinks, and trying to get all of their schedules compiled so we can make a master schedule for 3 different divisions up and down the East Coast. It's not easy.
No,
I
no.
will tell you, it's
I
not
mean,
easy.
just from looking at between contacting rinks, waiting for them to get back to you, I already know just from the issues we've had. Well, minor speed bumps, not issues, but like just
Well, you just
communicating.
have to have relationships with these
Yeah,
guys, because what you're going to do is you're going to call one, and you're not going to some will get back to you right away, and then you'll have some that don't get back to you for a week, and now I've got rinks holding time
yeah,
for me, like, hey, can you hold this? So I mean, we famously had a real problem in Buffalo this year in our pro division with a rogue owner who just like pulled the rug out from under us.
huh,
It's been a tough year, and especially as we're continuing to grow.
yeah,
Like the pro division grew this year. It didn't grow in size; it grew in like distance. Like it just kind of spread out a little
yeah,
bit. We have less teams in areas, but more teams spread out, which has been great because the level of the East Coast. I can't speak so much for the West because I haven't seen it, but the East Coast has been incredible, and I have no idea. Like I could tell you for the last 3 or 4 years, the Stinger coming out of the East. I don't know that this year. I
yeah,
really don't. So
yeah. I mean, you know, we'll we'll get to that for sure.
yeah.
That's definitely always a hot topic to talk about. Um, but I mean, like you go in and create schedules. I mean, does it make things more difficult when you start having to or start wanting to cross divisions and having like different divisions play each other? Does that make scheduling a little more difficult?
Um, a little, yeah, because now I got to coordinate. Like for example, we had one team between the Northeast and the Southeast that was crossing over, our Chesapeake team this
Mhm.
year, and in the hopes that maybe we don't know what's going to happen. There's another team that's contacted us for next year, and we've been in talks with Richmond about trying to join. So we almost can see like another little area kind of popping up there, but it can be challenging. For example, I mean, I got some real pushback from some of the Florida teams to go to Atlanta this year,
Yeah.
but to me it was like, hey, it's a travel league. You called us to join to play a travel league, and you said the reason is you tired of playing the same teams. Well, here's some new teams, right? So, and it was a commitment thing too for us. It was like, hey, if you guys are really in for this, you'll all get in, playing in a car or whatever, and you're going to find your way to Atlanta. So,
Yeah.
it can be challenging, but it's also that's the exciting part, and it's nice to not just keep playing the same 4 or 5, 6 teams.
Sure.
To see somebody new it's awesome. So, and I'll tell you, I mean, years ago, I mean, we play different now. I mean, everything now is festival style, and I mean, when the league started, it wasn't festival style at all, and it was you used to play 2 games. A team came in, and you were the home team, and they were the away team. You played 2 games, and then your minor teams or your semi-pro teams did the same thing, and it was like an event, and you were the home team. But as the sport has changed, that changed.
Yeah.
And there was this, yeah, and I couldn't even imagine doing that out here these days with the rink situations because so many teams don't have. I mean, every team had a home rink
Yeah.
back, back when we were doing that, and they're still doing that to a certain extent in Colorado. But out here, I mean, half of the league, I think, calls Skate Safe America their home rink in Long Island. So, and I think there's at least 7 teams that are at a Great American. So it's obviously different the way we're doing the festivals, and it's easier. Um, you know, with the number of teams we have these days, the amount of events we would have would be nuts.
Yeah.
And everyone used to schedule themselves back in the day. We used to all have. I mean, we didn't have Zoom. In 2002, we used to have to drive to a neutral location, and it was like the New York Stock Exchange floor, of people running around trying to schedule with each other. And trying to. But it was. Now it's. I'm not a pat myself on the shoulder kind of guy. I don't think, but if I have a strength, it's scheduling. I've been
Yeah.
scheduling stuff for 20, 30 years, and I'm kind of good at it, and that's it's not easy,
Oh
but
yeah.
it's partly the relationships you have with the other rinks, and just kind of knowing how it's gonna how you got to make it happen. So
I mean, I remember because I didn't necessarily. I got pulled in for a sub. Now that I think about it, looking at the rules, I don't know if it was very legal for me to play because my name wasn't on the roster, but I was wearing a jersey. But I remember it being
well,
like,
good thing there was the internet back then to blow a guy up during the
well,
finals for
well,
3 straight days.
yeah, I'm guilty of that. But I remember it being like every weekend too, and so like I'm thinking about it, the commitment of you're between this month and this month, you're going to travel almost every weekend and play a couple of games. I mean, I feel like it's still a commitment today, but it's less of a commitment in the fact that you are freed up at least 3 weekends out of the 4 in a
Yeah,
month.
well, and that's the double-edged sword, right? So when we used to do the 2 games at a time, and now remember when we started, we played a 32-game season, and the season was a lot longer.
Mhm.
So you're talking about 16 weekends. That and when you had to make you know 8 of those, it wasn't as hard as
Mhm.
now. Like when you miss one, you're like, oh, there goes 20% of the season.
Yeah.
So that's the double-edged sword of it. It's like, hey, yeah, it's less of a commitment, so you should be able to commit. But when you can't commit, it really stings.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that. My wife knows that weekend vacations are scheduled around hockey, and she can be damn sure that she knows that on a PIHA weekend, I'm not going anywhere but the hockey.
yeah, well, and I've floated the idea for a couple seasons in a row that I thought it would be better to run a 24-game schedule, simply from the fact that when right now when you play a 20-game schedule, and a lot of us do these 4-game weekends. I know down where you are, we do 6s and 4s for travel purposes, but a lot of the other places, especially in the Northeast, we're doing like 5 4s.
Yeah.
That's the standard, right? So my whole play was, boy, if we had 6 4s, it's still only 3 weekends. and that to me, I would push that. But the reason we haven't gone that route is because in those areas like where you are,
Yeah.
it's only going to force you to play the same teams even more, and it's going to become a burden. So, which is why we haven't gone that route. But I mean, like I said, there was a point where the league was 24 games. There was a point where the league was 32 games. It's it's a lot.
Well, and I know you mentioned it, but a little bit, but I also feel like you know there was a process in order to make one of these teams back in '06, '07, right? Which is like, hey, this team has a tryout, and I remember going to one, um, and it was in Inman, New Jersey, and it would, geez, they had 2 sessions, and there was probably about 50 people on the rink,
Sure.
and they ran drills, and then they just like in
Yeah,
school,
I
like
was
at school,
I
they
was
just
on both. I was on both sides of that. I was on that side in 2002, trying to make a team, and then starting the next year until 2008, well, 2007, we ran tryouts every year. I don't think we did in 2008. We just kind of ran it back with what we had, and but yeah, that's how most teams did it. But it was also the reason a lot of teams were doing that too was because you would be running a team, right?
yeah.
The Asheville Aces, and you're just playing men's league or high end men's league, and you're going to tournaments, and you say, "Boy, hey, this would be great. Let's play PIHA." But then you're all of a sudden you have to have this need for a second team. You'd have to have back then we put our pro team in, we had to have a minor team.
Yeah.
Now we've since called it semi pro. But you don't have the numbers for that. So then you have a tryout. You're like, oh, if we could find a stud or two, put them on our team, and then we'll take all these other guys and put them on a minor or semi team. So um, it's that was the evolution really of that, and I think that's why most people were doing that.
Yeah.
Most teams knew that they were either trying to find a ringer somewhere they didn't know about that was going to show up, like a Dan Dean showing up at Inman.
Well,
What team was that? What team was that? I'm trying to think like out of Inman, who would have ran out of Inman back in the day?
was it the Grizzlies?
No, Grizzlies have always played out of Iska. I don't know.
Uh,
You sure it was PIHA team? Not
well,
a not
it
a
was it was Pyle because I remember that day to the T because my brakes went out, and Inman's probably the only place that's not flat in New Jersey. So, no, yeah, I remember going there. It was a red team. Um,
Okay.
I could have swore it might have been Iska because I remember.
Definitely not Iska. Yeah,
Well, I
definitely not.
remember the logo being a bear or a wolf or was it a wolf on the
Oh,
helmet?
okay. So this was I don't know that they played PIHA. And it might have been you're probably talking about the Savage Wolves
Yes.
because that was Brian Traholidays, rest in peace, Brian. He that was kind of really if things got run out of there, it was him and I just don't. The Savage Wolves played AIHL. I know they did that in like 2008, 2009, 2010 ish. I think or no, actually they didn't because no, when Traholidays was involved there, I think he was with the Brawlers. Um, Maybe I think. Yeah, I don't know. We'll get
Yeah.
back to that. We'll circle back.
Yeah, so I mean, I just remember like going there and it's like, wow, I didn't know this was being going to be such a big deal. Now, granted, I was more ice back then, so roller was kind of second, so I was not necessarily on the page of the roller style, so I was not nearly as good of where I am at today for playing minor, right? But yeah, they I just remember like all those guys that played, I guess would be their top team had, red buckets, the wolf on their helmet, and I was like, that's cool.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
but you mentioned a split. Um, what? I mean, some people aren't necessarily gonna know about this, but want to tell us about the split that happened?
Sure. Yeah, 2008. PIHA really it blew up. I don't. It, we're about as big now as we were then, but understand that then there was a little bit more structure to it because, like I said, you used to have your you know pro
Yeah,
team and your semi pro team, and so it was a little. I think maybe if there was 40, 45 teams across the country, um, that meant there was 45 pro and there was 45 semi-pro. Now it's kind of become like a pyramid, right? There's less teams at the top,
Yeah.
but those teams are way better than the teams back in the day. Like maybe a couple of the better teams back in the day could compete with these teams, but I think any fifth place team in the pro league these days would feast back then, because then it was really regionalized, because when you had to play your home games, you couldn't travel. Like now, it doesn't matter who's on your team when you're doing festival style, because like you think about yourself, you could have a guy from Jacksonville on your team if you're all
Yeah.
going the same place,
For
right?
sure.
When you have to have 8 home weekends and 8 away weekends, it was a lot harder to jump around. So I mean, we had a
Yeah.
guy from Rhode Island. We had a guy from Rhode Island, Johnny Pinero, played with us for 3 seasons because there was no teams in the New England area. So he drove down 2004, 2005, 2006. He was 6, 7 hours in the car, and it was 10, 12 times a season. It was committed.
Yeah. That is
But
the definition of commitment.
that's no, or he should have been committed, one or the other. But obviously, then the league grew, and that was part of 2007. League really blew up at that point, and then by 2008, it just happened so fast. CJ went out in 2006, and then 2007, all of a sudden we had teams in New England. We had an emerging area in St. Louis. CJ Gamble, who ran a team in Pittsburgh, he moved back to California. He started a division there, and then we started to get interest in the Southwest, and we were truly kind of all over the map. More so than we are today. While we have more numbers now, and we have more numbers because, like I said, you can have 8 teams playing out of Skate Tape America right
Yeah.
now. Because it's just dense up there. Everybody loves playing roller hockey. Back then, how many of those players wouldn't have been playing because they didn't want to run an entire organization, or we used to kind of say, hey, this team plays out of that rink and this team plays out of the rink. There was only so many rinks. Now it's just a free for all. If you can slightly organize something, send your money in time, and follow the rules, you can show up and play with one team. So and there are definite pros and cons to that.
Sure.
I pound for pound miss the old way, but it just wouldn't be possible these days. So like I said, now it's great watching the pro because the pro is really stacked, and it's great. The, the burden is on them because they have to travel a little bit more for it now, but I think that's okay. I think they actually kind of like that. Um, yeah, so in 2008, as the league really was at its biggest, it just kind of politely, I'm going to say, like, it just kind of got out of the Yoder's control to a certain
Okay.
extent, and there was a lot of infighting, a lot of things that happened, and there's a lot of politics in roller hockey, and there was a faction of people that kind of you know steered us in one direction, and as I was kind of like the intermediary, I kind of was the role I am now without a title, where everybody called me for information, and I was frustrated because I wasn't getting the information, or I didn't like the direction we were going either. All of a sudden, like, there was a big split, and the AIHL was born a year later, and we had some great years in the AIHL. We really did. Again, like, we quickly turned the league back into kind of what it was, even with the PIHA, and it kind of really decimated PIHA for a while, and I give the Yoders a lot of credit for keeping it around.
Sure.
And I think they would give credit to Dennis Jelsic and Jay Muro for doing that and staying loyal to them. And but we were all over the country, and I was commissioner of that league for the first 4 years, and then that was the window of time that I was out. When I stepped away from the AIHL for a few years, I had children, and then after I had children, I left New York and I came down. I came back here to Pennsylvania, and then I got into the process of buying this place. So there was definitely a good 5 or 6 years where I was out. And you know, all of a sudden, like, as things were starting to come back together, I was settled in here, and I came back and tried to help mend that fence, and then I've been back here ever since, happily.
Yeah. I'd hope so, since you do a ton of work.
Yeah, I do a ton of work.
I mean,
But like I said, it's I'm recruiting some help on that next year, and obviously having people to help in other areas like Gannon. Gannon is a major help. And I give him a ton of credit. I know he just they have an infant at home, and he does what he can, and he's working two jobs also, one at the rink and one during the day, and it's not easy.
yeah,
But again, most people who are doing this are doing it because they love it, and so
yeah. I mean, I I get on Gannon's case sometimes, and I'm like, dude, what's going on? And he's usually give him a day or two, and he usually responds to me. But he's a good person to have in charge down here.
no, Gannon's a great person.
But you talked about commissioner, right? So what is this new role going to entail for you moving forward?
I don't know. I mean, he literally just asked me yesterday. He's like, I think there are some things. My earbud it does not want to stay in. Asked me, about that because there's just a lot of things that, from an organizational standpoint, that aren't happening everywhere. And I get a lot of phone calls. We started a new Midwest division this year, and as they're trying to get things started, I'm fielding phone calls, and and I've said I would love to be more involved from the top level, for the umbrella of what we do on a day to day basis in the Northeast, kind of really make sure that everybody is following the protocols of what needs to happen.
Sure.
There's things that I don't know. I'm very anal about certain things. I mean, I try to make sure every guy has a picture. I make sure every person has every bit of the information on the website on there. And a lot of that's because I want to portray a professional view
Sure.
of what we're doing, and let everyone know, hey, the league does care about the details, and sometimes in some of the places those details are getting missed, and I think the league knows that, and they're looking for somebody to kind of sit on top of the coordinators in all the areas. I mean, sort of like what I'm doing on the East Coast now, right?
Sure.
Like Gannon calls me when he has an issue, and the South, the Florida division doesn't really have. I'm running this Florida division because there isn't anybody down there. I'll tell you, Brandon's been awesome down there. He's been like my go-to guy. But it's like I said, it's been a tricky year in Florida, and I give those guys a lot of credit for sticking through because we've had rink problems, we've had team problems. I think we had like 7 or 8 teams that were interested, and now we're like limping to the end. But like I said, the hockey's been great,
Yeah.
and the guys are really committed to it. And I can see for sure, now that we've had a year in and we've got relationships with rinks and people, it will definitely go smoother next year. Knock on wood that we can get that going there again. But again, like there's Charlie took the lead in the Midwest this year, and that came together real late. He and I went to Detroit back in July during State Wars, and we just, I said to him, Charlie, hey, this is an area we knew was going to kind of blow up a little bit after we expanded to Michigan last year in the pro division, that we were starting to get phone calls. And I said, why don't we go to State Wars? Obviously, we both have great relationships with Timmy, and said, hey, let's just set up a booth and just give information out.
Sure.
And sure enough, it was very late in the game. I mean, July is not the time to be trying to recruit teams for a league that's going to start in late September when you need to be writing schedules in August. But to his credit, he took the names, and we got a division off. And we thought we were going to have a semi and a pro. But we ended up having enough to have a minor, and now after he spent the year traveling and getting it together, we think we've got some leadership there.
Okay.
And again, that's the next thing, is like he wants somebody now to work on top of those leaders so they know what the expectation is. And the same thing is in Colorado and stuff. The guys in Arizona, they call me all the time. So I think that's really the role. I mean, it's not completely defined yet, and I'm sure we'll discuss that more. But it's the same thing I did in the AIHL. I'm just kind of set the expectation. So everybody knows, like, hey, these are the documents you need. This is how you do a roster. This is what should happen on a game day where you fill out the roster.
Yeah.
Problems we definitely had in the Southeast last year at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, it's growing pains, and just making sure everyone gets held accountable and doing what they need to do and stuff like that. I mean, do you think that, talking about growing, do you think that there's still an untapped place? I mean, granted, there could be more growth in Florida and maybe in the Southeast and in the Midwest, but like somewhere
Yeah.
where PIHA's not right now, do you think that there is untapped potential?
Well, sure. I think Northern California for sure. Um, you're going to say, well, why wouldn't you say Southern California? Southern California is like the mecca for roller hockey. Um, I, I I would love to see Southern California come together. I'm being realistic. They just march to their own drum out
Yeah,
there, and
I'm aware.
it's like I mean the closest we had was during the AIHL, and we had such great leaders in Northern California, and we started to do those crossover festivals, and then all of a sudden, like, we really piqued the interest of the SoCal guys, because they were like, oh, these people take this serious, and they started to take it serious, and it kind of it crumbled because leadership was hazy at best back then. But
I think there's another place, and I think it's Texas.
Oh yes, yeah, that's a great call. Yeah, we were talking about Texas. Yeah, I agree. I definitely think Texas is another area for sure.
I mean, I'm not a representative of PIHA, but I have talked to people there, and I'm like, why aren't you guys starting a PIHA teams and
Well,
getting
and
teams
the
together?
answer to that too is, and Charlie and I have this conversation all the time, and we talk about not repeating the mistakes of 2008. And I mean, we have had serious, not serious. I don't want to say serious, because we're chugging along. We've had 2025, 26 has had definitely more bumps than the last couple, and that's mostly due to expansion.
Yeah.
I'm spread thin. We're dealing with, whenever you go to a new place, you're dealing with people you don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to say I have the Northeast on lockdown, but I know everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all right, so I've got two or three new teams that I have to get to know, and it's such a well-oiled machine that the teams figure it out very quickly. You know what I mean? They just see what everyone else is doing,
Yeah.
and they get into it. But this year, I was traveling to Florida for events, and we had stuff going on in Detroit, and we had stuff in places that we hadn't had before. So between Charlie and I running around trying to keep this stuff together, we have been committed to, we want to expand, but we can't expand all at once,
Yeah.
because when you expand all at once, you become completely spread too thin. People get upset and they say, "Oh my God, PIHA is such bullshit." I let's say bullshit.
Yeah. You can
Um,
say whatever you
yeah.
want on
All
here.
right. I mean, and we don't want that. I mean, look, it's not we're not the National Hockey League. Obviously, everyone knows that. I mean, it's roller hockey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the Timmy puts on a great show. It's not the National Hockey League. You know what I mean? But it is it's a challenge. But we continue to say, we don't. Let's. This is where we're going. We were going to Florida this year, and we were going to try to expand out in Detroit. And we have a very good contact in Northern California. We're going to see where that is in the next month or two. But to say, oh, we should go there. We should try to get Southern California going. We should. It's I don't know. We're going to see. We need to find the proper leadership in each
Sure.
area.
Yeah, you got to grow and stabilize.
Yeah, grow and stabilize is right. So where Charlie can't keep, he can't, he's been going to every event in the Midwest. God bless him. Getting in his car because he doesn't fly. So I mean, that's for the birds for me. But I drive it all that way. But good for him.
Like those 9 p.m.
Yeah,
meetings.
yeah.
But no, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
we're having 9 p.m. meetings because some of the people in the meetings it's 6 o'clock.
yeah, I know.
Or 7. So. Well, the other reason we do a lot of those 9 o'clock meetings is because for a lot of people, like, they're putting kids to bed, or they're coming home having dinner. So, but I'll note it, Dan. Note it.
Listen, it's fine. I know who it's for. It's fine. I'm not worried about it. But yeah, I mean, through all these regions, I mean, we can talk about divisions. You are more knowledgeable probably about like the northeast divisions. And I mean, I also heard that you're a coach.
Yeah, I got talked into it. So for the last couple of years, I had Scotty Ives running the program for me, and Billy Brennan. I love Billy. He kind of jumped on all the grenades for Scott because Scott's got I always wanted to try to keep church and state separate. Not that Charlie and CJ are doing that, but I was faced with the Gladiators kind of falling apart a little bit this year.
Sure.
And so I kind of took the reins to a little bit, and that forced me into like running one team, and the other team kind of ran itself, and I don't go near it. But and I think Bill still kind of runs that, but then Billy also got involved. Our minor guys kind of split into two, and one became the Geese Chasers. The one kid kind of his family business. They sponsored the whole thing. We came there, and Billy was kind of a little split to both sides. So I got conned a little bit into coaching.
Now, I mean, let's talk minor real quick, right? In the Metropolitan last year, Mustache came out of that division. Usually, for the past few years, it's been the Sting. I mean, do you see those two? Do you see those two teams battling it out, and do you see one of them coming out?
Well, let's backtrack a little bit and explain something, because I'd love for anybody who's going to watch to understand the rationale for this. When we started, we had three divisions.
Yeah.
We had a Metropolitan, we had Mid Atlantic, and we had our Keystone division. And that was because we thought the Midwest was going to have a minor and a semi-pro, and we thought the Rocky Mountain was going to have two minor divisions.
Sure.
And after we did our schedules and built everything, a couple teams bowed out in the Rocky Mountain area, and all of a sudden I got the call from CJ and Charlie and said, "Hey, look, we don't think we have enough out here for two divisions." And the reason I bring that up is because when we have the final, we have to have an even number of teams from each division, because we always do a 3-game round robin, and then we have our playoff. And if we don't have an even number of teams, it forces us into a 2-game or 4-game round robin, and we don't want to do 2 because we want everyone to have enough games to make the trip, and we don't physically have enough time to do a 4-game round robin, without adding a whole day to the event, and it just becomes a little too much. So that was where midstream, and I hated to do it, but we talked and we said, hey, we need another team, and the logical place to pull that other team from was from the Northeast, because we had the most. We could have easily had 4 right out the gate. But it was like, hey, we're trying to come up with our number. We're going to come up with 8 teams for the final, and we hey, we got 2 here, 3 there, 1 there, 1 in Florida, one in the Midwest. So we thought we had 8 that way. So we had to split what was 3 into 4. It was tough to do that, but we looked at it and was like, hey, there are teams that are finals worthy that are just going to be sitting at home on their couch, watching Roller Planet. So,
yeah, I mean, like I said, Mustache was new last year from the Metro division.
And those are great guys. And if there's a team that I talked about that got to the finals last year and we're like, wow, this was, and I would say a lot of those guys aren't new. Most of the teams in Long Island, even if it's a new team, they're not new. Most of these guys know.
Yeah, they rebrand.
Yeah, they rebrand, and but sometimes they come back really strong under a good rebrand, and that was a great rebrand. Al and Mike did an unbelievable job putting that team together, and they got close to winning a championship last year, and they will be tough. I mean, they are a very different animal than I think anybody in the league has seen.
They are physical.
They are. I mean, I like to call them a bar fighting team that happens to play hockey, but
you're not wrong.
It's just the uniforms make them look like that. But I mean, they are veteran players, and you remember the old Nintendo game where you had the skinny guys and the medium guys and the big guys. Yeah. They're all big guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and they play that way. I mean, they play to their strengths, and but they've got great hockey sense, and they're not gonna dangle everybody. They're just gonna play physical, and they're gonna move the puck where it needs to be, and they've got good goaltending, and they're definitely a force. Now the Sting, I mean, they have come back with a vengeance this year. I mean, last year was kind of a down year for their minor team, especially after having lost in the final the year before to the Trash Pandas. What was a great series. I mean, that was such a great series. Won in the last 3 seconds, I think, if I recall. But
I do have to say, number 77 on that team was awful.
Yeah. Oh, brother. Yeah. I mean, I mean, on paper, if you were asking me on, just eyesight, they're the team to beat this year. That Sting team, they're young and they're fast, but they're going to have to go through the mustache, and that's going to be interesting because, how they're going to match up in a playoff series against a physical team is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting, especially with the playoffs being in a smaller rink for them. But we're going to have the answer to that this weekend. I mean, that playoff is happening this weekend at Rapid Fire, so we'll know by Sunday. Most of the rest of the East isn't going to be done, to the same weekend you guys are on the 21st, 22nd. But that particular division for the minor and the semi-pro is going to happen this weekend. So it should be interesting. On paper, it should be the Sting. But I tell you this now, don't count out the Legend Silver team either.
Okay.
The Legend Silver team also is loaded with young kids that, I know a lot of those kids. They can play hockey.
Okay.
So, it's, imagine we took 2 really good teams out of that division when we made the 4th division. I mean, the Impact were a goal or 2 away from beating the Mustache last year in the championship. The defending champions were in that division too. I mean, the Legends Black. So
I was gonna say there was 4 teams that probably should have been split up anyway. So
right. Well, and that was how we arrived at that decision. We said, hey, look, let's grab some teams from here and here and make a 4th division. And there was a lot of contacting, the different teams, and everyone had their opinion one way or the other, but I think for the most part, everybody agreed on where we settled. So, except for the Sting, I think they wanted us to move the mustache out, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, because most of those teams are right there in Long Island, so I get trying to put them in the same division, but they're just 4 powerhouses of the Northeast.
Well, and that was about, I mean, when you're putting teams in divisions, it's about location, not talent, because you're trying to make sure the majority of the games you're playing are in division, and the travel isn't as bad. But yeah, it was a good thing that we split that up because, it was overstacked. There was going to be 2 teams there that deserve to be at the finals. It just won't be.
Yeah. I mean, moving to the Mid-Atlantic division in minor, Purple Pandas just defeated Empire, so that was last weekend. They beat them in 2 games. So now
one and a half.
But they'll go on to play the defending champions, the Legends Black. I mean, you have, even in this division though, you take, if you just look at records, right? You have the Purple Pandas not looking like the team that will come out of this just based on only having 3 regular wins, right? But I mean, you have Legends Black with 14 wins in regular, Gladiators with 13, Impact with 13. I mean, you're only separated by 5 points from 3rd to 1st. This division here, and I said it last year with one of the divisions, this is going to be a dogfight of a playoffs.
Oh, dogfight. Absolute dog. I mean, obviously I'm coaching that Gladiator team, and it's, it's not a pretty look. And we also lost, one of our top 3 players to an ACL tear in a men's league game last week. So, that's not easy either, but, it's going to be a dogfight. The Impact are very tough. They've got good goaltending, and, they've got they're going to grind you, and they're going to wait for opportunities. And they've got 2 or 3 guys that are absolute goal scorers. They're super tough. And then what do you say about the Legends Black? I think Sean Connolly's the best goalie in the minor league, 100%, in my opinion. They are not the team that won last year, and that was by design. The league, as the league, we went to them and said, hey, you went 28-0 last year, and you need to prove to the league that you're going to come with a different team this year, and they did. They just immediately dropped their two best players. One stopped playing, and the other one went up to their semi-pro team, and
Okay.
we said, okay, and obviously they're competitive now. I think the league got a little bit better for sure, to catch up to them, but they are, they didn't go 20-0, and they're not the I don't think they're the favorite to come out of that division,
Okay.
because I don't think there is one. I think any one of the three teams can come out. It's just going to
Sure.
be a dogfight. I mean, no offense to the Pandas. I mean, for their sake, I hope they shock the world. It would be great.
Well, I mean, I've been talking to my brother, so and he was updating me on the game scores and everything like that last weekend. So that's the only reason why I knew they won.
Yeah, good deal. Yeah.
But I mean,
So-
looking at the Garden State, right? The Grizzlies came back this year with a team, and so they're taking up the second spot, the number 2 spot in that conference division. You get the Trash Pandas are there again. This division's with one of the the only one with 6 teams in it, right? So,
that division was. We didn't add anybody to that division. Okay. What we did was we took the bottom 2 teams out, which were the Purple Pandas and the Empire, who played each other. And we made the estimate. We're like, neither of these teams are going to make the playoffs. It was looking pretty clear. So we said, we're not hurting them by taking them out of the division that they weren't going to make the playoffs in. So we wanted to not mess with the integrity of that division to begin with, because it was pretty competitive top to bottom. Maybe the Jagaloons look a little stronger than the other teams, but I really think that's a 3-team race. The Wolfpack are not a bad team and could surprise somebody for sure, and I wouldn't fall over, completely stunned. But I mean that's a great division. I think it's any one of those 3 teams: the Jagaloons, the Grizzlies, and the Trash Pandas. And the reason I say that is, I watched the Grizzlies and the Trash Pandas miss people a lot, and more so than I think the Jagaloons did. So I think why the Jagaloons have a better record. I think when, assuming you would make the assumption that come playoff time, everybody shows up.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a just like the other division. It's going to be a 3-team fight. And, I wouldn't be shocked if any one of those 3 teams goes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, looking at the Mid-Atlantic and Garden State, there's obviously one clear team in each with high plus minus. But like you said, you could be playing against teams that are traveling that don't have their full team, could get beat by them. So plus, if anyone's looking at plus minus, it could be a little deceiving.
Yeah, I bet you it's in all 4 divisions in the Northeast, you're not going to see 4 1 seeds in Colorado. I would bet a lot of money on that.
I mean, moving over to the Keystone, and I mean, the one team that just seems like a one-man wrecking crew, that's the Shockwave. I mean, that guy. Sure. I'm gonna look
Kyle, the addition of Kyle Rosendale changed that team. I mean, the Shockwave were always a tough W, but Kyle Rosendale is the best player in the minor league this season that I've seen.
51 goals.
And he's made an immediate impact, and it is what it is, right? They're going to be a tough beat on a big rink with a healthy Rosendale coming down. And the team has been invigorated by his presence, and they play with a lot of swagger now. And they travel. Those guys travel.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're
out in Pittsburgh.
They have zero home. They have zero home games.
Oh yeah.
We have a real tough time with rinks in Pittsburgh. I mean, so. They have to travel 5 times, and they do it well. And I think they went to Maryland twice this year, and then otherwise they made 3 trips out, and they've been strong all 3 weekends. So they're going to be tough.
I mean, I think the key to beating them is to stop him from scoring.
Well, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I can see this guy coming out with 15 goals in the playoffs, if not more, if they go ahead and just lock up and 4-game it. I mean,
Well, and if anybody could beat them, to me, it's definitely the Geese Chasers,
okay.
because the Geese Chasers they're loaded. I mean, they are solid from top to bottom, and I, if they come out of that division again, I'm not shocked. They are a very strong team. They have very few holes. Pound for pound, definitely deeper, but they don't have that McDavid type
Yeah.
top of the lineup guy. They have just a lot of you know A- guys, and not that A+ guy,
Yeah.
and so and you know their goaltending, the last 2 weekends, I don't think their number one guy was there. So, when they played the Metro guys, they had a 50-something-year-old goalie in net, who's
Nice.
I don't think the guy ages. But if anybody knows Bob Meacham's been around. Like, I looked up to Bob Meacham when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so the fact that he's still going, it's unbelievable. But Matt Lemma is definitely their guy, and he wasn't at the last 2 weekends, including the one where they played the Shockwave and stuff. So I assume that's gonna be the division final.
Okay.
The Iron Knights and the Scream are both very good teams, and could definitely upset somebody. But it's gonna be tough to slow a deep team like the Geese Chasers down, and it's gonna be real tough to slow Rosendale down.
Yeah. I mean, moving over to the Piedmont, which is the division I play in. Obviously last year, Mops were a very solid team. They also had if they could, they'd have 30 guys on their roster. So they ended up splitting up, right? So, which in a way hurt them, but at the same time gave a lot more guys a chance to play, and they're both still solid squads. Always,
Sure.
always tough to play against. Then we had the addition of the Snipers from Chattanooga.
Well, and I think the Snipers kind of really took a number of the players from the original Blades team.
Yeah,
last
yeah.
year Also,
Yeah, I mean,
so
it's another team, though, that the Blades last year had max amount of guys and everyone wanted to play. And, I talked with the Chattanooga guys, they were just like, we have too many guys. We just create our own team. And it worked out. I mean, like I said, solid team. We just lost to them a couple weekends ago in the overtime. I mean, they're a solid team. Every team, 1 through 4 solid, and I'm nothing against Puff Puff, but I mean, when you look at them, they have 6 overtime losses.
it's unbelievable. Every weekend it happened. Like, I just shook my head. Like, I mean, that's a record, by the
Yeah.
way, to have lost 6 times in overtime. I mean, I, I mean, you put 5 of those in the win column, and I think they're a dangerous team, Dan. I really do.
And that's the thing is they can be very dangerous. I think they're another team too that is depending on who shows up, which for the 5th team going to the playoffs, they'll have their full squad. And I'm pretty sure that that team, especially with Chris bringing in the 1v1 overtime, I'm sure Chris was just loving every second of that, because they may have out of those 6 overtimes, I think they went to maybe 4 or 5 1v1s.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think they lost. I think they lost one on opening weekend on a penalty shot in overtime.
Yes,
if I recall.
And a 1v1 penalty shot. I remember because it was in Nashville. Guy made a move, got tripped, and they were like, penalty shot, and the guy went down and buried it, and it was just like, oh, well, this is new.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's our rule now, is that any penalty in the 1v1 is a penalty shot, no matter what the infraction. So obviously you're not going to put a guy in the box. So, but yeah, it's I think to me, your team and the Snipers seem to be the 2 teams to look out for in that division. If I were, if PIHA were on FanDuel, that's probably where I'd put my money. But both Mops teams are pretty good, and like I said, I have Puff team. I mean, if you look at, they didn't just lose to the same team either. I mean, they played all of those overtime losses were against, all of the teams in the division. So I could see, I think that the gap there in your division is a lot smaller than in some of the other divisions.
For sure. I mean, like I said, the Mops are a lot of talent on both teams. Gonna be personally, I'm kind of glad they split up. They were, They were a very solid team last year. We lost to them in 2 games in overtime, but also our second best player blew out his knee last year too in the first game of playoffs in the semis, so that didn't help us. But well, actually, no, first game of championship. But you know, you got to overcome it. We didn't, and you know, we retooled. So we retooled, and you know, we lacked secondary goal scoring, so we got that. So yeah, I mean, like I said, any of those teams in playoffs in a couple weeks can come out and win. That's not a that's and I hate being confident too. And this is I'm nowhere close to being anywhere confident of coming out of winning this division. So
Well, the commissioner and me, you know, I like new teams, and I don't want to see 3 Sting teams come out. I don't want to see 2 Mops teams come out. I'd like to see more, you know, not anyone in particular. I just, you know,
yeah,
I think the more organizations we can have out there, the more eyeballs on what happens at the finals, the more excitement there is. You know, the more it goes back and spreads. Hey, this was great. We got to get back there. Like I started the conversation out
yeah,
with, you know, an hour ago. I said that's, you know, that to me is should be the goal of
sure,
every team. Let's get to the finals, you know, and then if you get to the finals, you're at the level to win. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
I mean, I'm hoping that, you know, we're balancing the league out good enough that, like, you know, obviously, like, think about Florida. We had no idea. I had one kid in Florida who didn't put a team in, telling me we can't go to Atlanta. We're gonna get creamed. And then I think Florida won more games in Atlanta than the Southeast teams did.
yes. And I mean I mean we're the only team that actually beat all the Florida teams, and it was not easy.
Right.
You know, and like I said, I think the one team, the Pegasus, that is no longer a team. I think they dropped out, right? But they were a lot of ice guys trying to figure out roller, but plenty of talent. But the ice
Well, and I
hockey
and
run
I
and gun didn't work.
and I hope that they can
Yeah,
reorganize, because there was a team that did that had that same path last year, and that was the New Jersey Jagaloons. These were all ice guys that had just started playing at Great American Center, and you could see the skill, but they just didn't know
yeah,
what they were doing for roller. You know what I mean? They just you know, the resets and you know, things like that. And now all of a sudden, you know, we're here a year later. They lost their best player to play pro. I mean, obviously they brought a couple other guys in, but you know, now they just finished on top of their division.
yeah,
So, you know, there's, and as I said, that Florida division, there's so much talent down there. I mean, you know, the years I would go down with teams to, you know, to tours when they were down there for a couple of years in a row at Tampa, we're like, look at all these Florida teams in the men's division.
yeah,
We need a Florida division, you know, and then we started a Florida division and we went, man, there is nowhere to play down here.
yeah, yeah,
There's just nowhere to play, and that's why we don't have a division. But you know, there's a, you know, finally the rink in Stewart has a still mat floor down, and we developed a great relationship with Todd Burgle, you know, in Naples, you know, outdoor. But you know, they've got a you know, a sport court floor, and then obviously we're at Fort Myers, and you know,
yeah.
gosh, Central Florida needs a hockey rink somewhere.
Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
Orlando's got a rink, but it's concrete, so
right,
they just need to
yeah,
put some tile down.
for sure, sure.
I mean, going over, let's talk about Florida. I mean, like I said, uh, I think the Crocs figured it out because when we played them
Me
on the
too.
crossover weekend, they were quite dysfunctional. And like I said, it could have just been they had practically a full squad, but I don't know if it was their top guys that I've played against for a couple of years now. But I mean, between them and the Hooligans gave us the hardest time. The chaos came with like nobody, but there are talented young kids on that team as long as they can all
Well,
make it.
well, Vinny jumped on a grenade there because we had 4 teams, and we had a team that was just kind of adversarial, and you know, just didn't understand that we were starting a division and it was a group project. You know, like, you know, we're not familiar with the area, we're not
Sure.
familiar with the rinks. We needed help, much like we did in the Southeast last year when, you know, everybody we had I think we had a conference call for like 7 Sunday nights in a row,
Yeah.
you know. 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Uh, but so we needed that fourth team, and Vinny, who already had his pro team last year and was committed to having a semi-pro, said, "Hey, I'll throw something together. I have no idea what I'm going to send to Atlanta, but for the sake of the schedule, and he's had a more consistent team in when they've had the games in Florida, and I mean, I would say it's a two-team race,
Yeah.
but you never know. I mean, there's those kids aren't terrible hockey players, So
No.
he's just been all over the place with the roster, with semi guys playing minor and minor guys playing semi, because that's just the way he's ran his organization. But now they're going to have to play one or the other. So I mean, I think it's definitely, and I agree with you 100%. At the beginning of the season, I was like, wow, the Hooligans really looked like they're a borderline semi-pro team. And then all of a sudden, here came the Crocs during the course of the year. And I was at their first event in Naples, that wasn't in Atlanta. And I was like, wow, this Hooligans team they're going to show up in Colorado. They're going to be legit.
Yeah.
Big teams are going to, and now, like, as I'm watching it, the Crocs just have, like, they've just kind of, like you said, they figured it out.
Yeah.
I don't think it's guaranteed that they're going to win. I think it's going to be a dogfight.
Yeah.
I think, I hope it comes down to the two of them on Sunday on the 22nd, and the two of them go to 3 games, and it's an absolute barn burner. But and like I said, I've grown very, very fond of those guys down there, and whichever one comes out is they're not they're a
not,
championship contender.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, you got the Crocs are speed. The Hooligans are just more physical and more stout team. They're kind of, I wouldn't say at the caliber of the Mustache of physicality, but they're a physical team. I mean, they're good. The Crocs are just young and fast. So if you have a plan to stop that, then that's what you got to do. But you both are solid.
Right, I agree.
I mean, we can briefly go over Midwest. I mean, I don't know. I mean, how much you have knowledge of the Midwest.
I don't have a ton. I don't have a ton because I haven't been able to go there. I mean, it really sounds to me like that Dirty Dogs team, that Motor City Dirty Dogs team,
Yeah.
is the team to beat there. But I think, for what I understand, the PA Roller Club with Hayden Hintmeyer is very good, and the Columbus Heat, all those guys that play at a Nashers rink is they're 500, but they're I think they're in those games with those better teams. I mean, the other two teams, they don't look like they're going to be there, but those games are happening this weekend. Also, their playoff is this weekend, so we'll know,
Yeah.
what the deal is there in that division. But yeah, I mean, again, from what Charlie says to me, they're very good teams, and he definitely expects them to compete at the finals for sure.
Okay. I mean, let's jump over to the 4 divisions that you umbrella over in semi. I mean, the first one's the Metro. I mean, this one, I feel like it's going to be a dogfight for the top 3 teams. I mean, you have the Snipers, the Sting, the Rebellion, all within 6 points of each other.
Well, and this division has been a 2-team race for a while now. I mean, it has been Sniper Sting for a couple of years in a row. The Snipers are, again, they haven't won a championship since like 2017, and I think they were like rink rat something back then. But they're always right there. I mean, and last year, had they had a little better attendance in Colorado, I think they definitely would have won.
I was gonna say they had like what, 5 guys?
No, they didn't have 5 guys. They were just missing 1 or 2 of their big pieces. The 5 guys team was a couple years ago.
That's right. Yeah, that was a couple years because I remember that year because I was like
that was the Sting team a couple years ago. Yeah,
mixing
or yeah. So now the Sting team, they're very good. I mean, like, it's they've had a couple guys on that team for a long time, and they lost Mike Tardino this year. He moved on and he went. I think he's played with the Legends this year, which the Legends getting out of the Mid-Atlantic division last year. That was kind of a softer division, and they lacked scoring. They had a big bench, good goaltending. They just lacked some offensive punch when they were in Colorado last year. But the Rebellion team is um, they're very good, and if they came out of that division, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Okay.
I mean, so we had a team up in that division called the Blazers, and the Blazers were always a sub 500 team in semi pro, but they were always a tough out. They never like they might go 4-16, 5-15, but they were never an easy win. Because they had some high end guys on that team, and in particular, they had Ryan Kottkamp,
Okay.
who's one of the best individual players in the league. And I think he's right up there again in points in the league. And I think Andrew Satola was on that team also. And those two guys, when the Blazers decided to drop down to minor this year, they went and hopped up onto the Rebellion team and made that Rebellion team that much better.
Okay.
The tough part for them is that John Pinero didn't make playoff eligibility, so he won't be. And he's an enormous piece.
Yeah.
I know he had a number of personal complications this year, and he won't be there. But I mean, they're very strong. Like Troy Powers, Driz, Jesse Petito is very good offensively, and Foley himself and Troy Miller. These are good players. So they're going to be a tough out for those two teams. I mean, the Sting and the Snipers. I would still put my money on the Snipers, although they're these games being played at Rapid Fire this weekend on a smaller rink. That doesn't play to the Snipers' favor. The Snipers are young and fast, and they love to spread the floor and use speed. So we'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't be shocked if the Rebellion came out.
Okay. I mean, so we go over to Mid Atlantic, and you got 4 teams there. You got Assault, Legends, Steel, and Mach 1. The Assault is they're a new
Juggernaut.
addition. Yeah, well, they're a juggernaut.
Well,
They're also are they a rebrand, or are they? Because I mean, I know most of those guys on that team.
They're a rebrand. I mean,
Okay.
for the most part, they are the Propel team that was there last year. I mean,
Gotcha.
the majority of those guys. But there's a handful of people. Obviously, Gizzy's playing. He's out of Trash Panda now. He's playing with them, and same with Tom Russo is there. Oddly enough, the very first game of the year on the East Coast this year was the Snipers versus the Assault. And I texted my buddy Jimmy V, and I said, Jimmy, I'm telling you now, if I were putting my money on it, this very first game is going to be the final. I mean, only because that was my preseason prediction. Just knowing who the teams were, and I could still see that right now. I mean, the Assault team is very good now. The Legends are a better team than they were last year. Matt Ferrari's off that minor team. He's on their semi team. Like I said, they have just said his name a second ago. Why can't I think of his name? They picked up Tardino, and they were already strong and just lacked some scoring, and they picked up that scoring. They have fantastic goaltending on that team. They have an enormous amount of players. If I think they have a downfall, it's that they have too many players. That's my opinion, but that's the way they run their team, and it's they're going to be tough to beat for anybody too. I mean, I think that's the Assault's division. I think the Assault are a good pick to win a championship, but it'll be interesting. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Keystone. You have Gladiators, Barons, Blizzard, Bayman. I mean, looking at this, it kind of seems it's looking like it's weighted more towards the Gladiators in this division.
I agree, but the Barons team and the Blizzard team are both very good.
Okay.
And again, it will be about participation. How I haven't seen a full Blizzard team, and this is their 3rd year in the league, I think, and this is the least committed I've seen them at events, as far as full benches, and I just wonder if they come with a full bench, with Zach Orcott in net, they're going to be a tough team to beat.
Okay.
And the Barons have a lot of former Philadelphia Deuces guys on their team, and again, if they show up, I think again, the Gladiators look like the team to come out of this division. But I wouldn't be shocked if one of those two teams were there.
Okay. And let's go down to the southeast with a kind of a slight shakeup, but an addition of the chaos to this division. New Atlanta team name, rebranding there. But you have the chaos, the mops, the Citrus Kings, the Blades, and the Havoc.
Yeah, I think the team still to beat here is the Mops.
Okay.
I think that they're stronger than they were last year, and they're hungry to get back. But the Chaos has a very good team. Um, whether or not they get those last four games in, that was slated for the big snowfall weekend we had a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the crossovers you had talked about. We were sending the Bayman down to Raleigh, but it'll be interesting. It's a clear two-team race, but I like that Citrus Kings team too. That they added a couple of guys, in Andrew Green, Eddie Jones, some guys that I think could really help them. And I wouldn't say that that they shouldn't be considered in that equation. I mean, they're not a favorite, but I think those three teams, especially the top two teams, the Mops and the Chaos are there. I mean, I would give the slight edge to the Mops because I've seen how Gannon sends his guys around,
Yeah.
and I still don't think he's put an A roster on the floor for any event yet.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of broken it up and making sure everyone
yeah,
gets their game.
yeah.
So.
I mean, they jumped on a grenade and they went to Fort Myers for a 4 game set. And they went with a ghost squad. And it's complicated putting these schedules together where like I said, the Chaos. They were like, hey, we're in, but can you get us one home set? So.
Yeah.
We asked the Citrus Kings to drive all the way from Jacksonville down to Fort Myers, and I made that trip from Orlando, and it was long.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was an 8-hour drive. So a lot of people think, oh, it's one state, so it's not that big of a drive. But Jacksonville tip to tip in Florida, it's a heck of a drive. And then those guys all took flights and went down. So it was good. And again, they didn't go down with an A squad. They went down with an Atlanta squad like the Chaos did.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's get teams there and feel our commitment and see if we can get a couple W's maybe. And but yeah, I think that's a 2-team race with the Citrus Kings, having an outside shot.
Well, and I think the problem with this division too is that there's just so many penalties. This division is physical's good, but I think that this division, from watching them, is over physical, and then too much shit happens after the whistle. Which is why we have teams with like 88 PIMs and 60 PIMs in this division.
Hey, I had 88 penalty minutes in the season once.
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, the Mops are the team to beat. They are the reigning champions from this division. And I think that if you want to go to Colorado Springs, you got to go through the Mops. So,
For sure.
I mean, let's jump into our final section here, which is Pro East. You have, I guess, 3 new teams. You have the Dirty Dogs. You have the Sixers.
Well,
Blue
the Dirty Dogs are the Michigan Fury.
Okay.
For the most part.
Gotcha.
I mean, they rebranded only because they linked up with the Dirty Dogs guys in the semi-pro division. But for the most part, most of that team is the Michigan Fury from last year. So, what's new is the Sixers. They came in, and that's kind of some Rage Cat guys, some Skittle guys, and we've had a mixed bag with them. I mean, like when we had our big event in Pittsburgh, they had a rough weekend, and then a couple weeks later they went and I think they went 4-0, the next weekend. So it's an interesting and the Hockey Plus Blue Healers they're a brand new team. They're a team that was kind of born out of a travel team, a bunch of guys in central Pennsylvania saying, hey, look, we're going to put this travel team together for summer tournaments. Let's play PIHA also. And but I don't know that there's a single player on that team that hasn't been playing PIHA for the last 3 or 4 years in some respect. I mean, the Eisenhower brothers,
Yeah.
were there, famously on the Inferno for a very long time. I mean, I think Joel Eisenhower won three MVGs in a row, dating back to last year and past. All that time with the Inferno, and a couple of those players were guys from Propel that didn't make the jump to the Assault. And like I said, they're a very strong team. They're just, you're gonna look at them and go, oh man, they only have one regulation win
Yeah.
on the season. But I think they're just figuring it out. Like, you watch them play, they're not a bad team. They just, they're just still figuring out how to be a team, and I think they're very good.
Yeah. I mean, and you also have the Wings, which the Wings are, I mean, they're obviously a pro team during the summer, but they are a rebranded org in the pro division, right?
No,
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 they're new.
they're new. So Jess Hackett played with Michigan last year, and as we were trying to expand this area, he went back, I guess, to Eric Hawk and said, "Hey, let's put a team in because we're going to have teams out in this area now, and it's doable." And I've never known Eric not to, when he commits to something, to putting something very solid on the floor,
Okay.
and they have. I mean, honestly, it would be tough for me not to put my money on them to come out of the East this year,
Okay.
knowing what I know about the Sting this year, or
Gotcha.
or seeing the doubt for the first time in a while in Jay. And it's a personnel thing. I think they're going to have some personnel issues this year at the playoffs, and even more so at the finals. So, but I would never. It seems I don't know that I would ever bet against Jay,
Sure.
because there's something to be said about coaching. A lot of teams aren't coached, and Jay is a very good coach. Jay knows how to push people's buttons, and he knows when to make moves. And I would say to every team in this league, find a coach, and one that you trust, not just a person to throw on a bench. Find a coach, and I know there's very few of them out there, but I always see that the teams that have good, solid coaching always seem to to win those tight situations,
Yeah.
because you've got somebody making the proper decision instead of a bunch of guys infighting trying to figure out what to do. And sometimes that little intangible is what is the difference maker.
Sure.
So
I mean, and
yeah,
it looks like Mauritius thing is kind of a better team this year than they were last year, because I feel like they got
oh,
stomped on last year.
for sure. Well, it was like last year we were struggling on the East to fill out the division properly. And Jay is like, hey, I got a whole bunch of younger kids. They're going to start playing summer tournaments. Let me throw them at the fire, and we'll put them in. And they're great players. And a year later, with some additions and some really good goaltending this year, that's a scary team.
Yeah.
Could the Mauritius Sting be in Colorado? Absolutely.
I
I
mean,
can tell you what. I think honestly, I think any of the top five teams really could end up in
okay.
Colorado. I the Inferno are in fifth place and could very easily be in Colorado. I mean, they're always a perennial,
Yeah.
team that could be there. They just they were the 1A team out east for so long, just couldn't get past the Sting. You know, this is going to be the most exciting race on the East Coast, and it's cool that it's the pro division. But to
Yeah.
me, I mean, all those divisions we talked about are great. This to me is the most interesting because I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
And
last year's finals was exciting. I mean, that was an exciting finish. I mean, that was a barn burner all the way to the end.
Oh, you're talking about the final.
Yeah, like the final in the Eastern side.
Yes.
That matchup, those matchups were, I mean, the way you're talking is, would you say it's you would expect this to be even closer games than they were last year?
Yeah, but not between two teams.
Okay.
Between five teams.
Yeah.
I have no idea who's going to win in this division. So it's going to be interesting, and we're playing these games on a really big rink in Harrisburg. So it should be interesting. And I should note, we were supposed to have our final 6 games on that big snow weekend in Buffalo. And you'd say, Anthony, why would you be scheduling games in Buffalo in January? That sounds like insanity. Well, that's that's because, like I mentioned earlier, we had some issues in Buffalo earlier in the season. We were supposed to kick the season off out there, and
Yeah.
we just had this kind of rogue owner that just kind of threw us an absolute curveball, and we had to cancel the weekend. And then the only place to put it was at the end of the schedule, and we had said from the very beginning, yeah, it's probably 50-50 at best that we were going to have these games. And I sent an email out that Monday, and I said to everybody, hey, looks like the games are on. They're not really calling for much. And then a day later,
Yeah.
you guys were in the thick of it down there where the storm hit. All of a sudden the storm shifted a little bit north, and it was like the whole Northeast got blanketed. And then 2 days later we canceled the whole event. So what we're doing here is the teams are all coming in on the playoff weekend into Harrisburg. We actually moved the event. The pros were supposed to be at Marple with the other divisions on the 21st, 22nd. But in order for them to get more of their regular season in, they're all going to a separate location in Harrisburg. And on Saturday, they're playing more regulation games to get them to 18 total.
Gotcha.
And then there will be and this is the really interesting part, is there's going to be a quarterfinal and a semifinal, which is only one game elimination, which really is going to put anything into the realm of
Yeah.
possibility here. Because hey, it might be tough to beat the Sting team or the Buffalo team, if you're the Sixers,
Yeah.
but you only have to do it once.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ball game, right? A goalie has one bad game, or your guys just put it together all of a sudden, like for one game. It's anything can happen. So that's and again, this is schedule dictated why we're doing it this way,
Sure.
because
Sure.
obviously we're bringing all these teams in, and we wanted to make sure that they were at least getting four or five games for coming in for the weekend. So they'll play their 4 games, get to 18, and then everyone's going to make the playoffs since they're there. And we'll do a 2-7, 3-6, 4-5,
Yeah.
and then in the next morning we're going to have a quarterfinal followed by a best-of-3 final. And I really think it could be any of those 5 teams. And honestly, now that I say that, I mean, even with those 1 game eliminations, it could be very interesting who's still alive come Sunday.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the East is always interesting to see who is capable of taking down the Sting, because the Sting have been there for so long.
Yeah. And I think the Chaos are going to be a real problem for anybody this year on the other side. I mean, they're only stronger than they were last year.
Yeah.
Johnny Chavo wasn't at the finals. Vinny's got a taste for blood, having lost last year. So and again, the Outcasts are a very good team out there. The Thunders, so with the addition of the Chaos out there, and I know we're pretty much talking East, but
That's fine.
with only the West out there, I mean, the Connex Outcast team is, they're very good. They were very close to being the Western team last year. But the Colorado teams, with the addition of the Fleas, they were able to dip down one of their teams. So what I mean by that is, like, instead of having 4 or 5, they have 4 teams in Colorado, or 5 teams last year. This year they only had 4, which meant that there was a better pool of players to pick from, and the Thunder they're a better team this year because of it, for sure. Again, the Demon Dogs are only a couple of years removed from winning a championship.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in 5th place in that division. Obviously they've got some games to make up against some other teams, but again, any of those 5 teams for me are, I mean, honestly, the Chaos, I think, are at a different level personally.
Well, and I think
and
the
again,
Chaos retooled too, because I mean they brought in the Greenbergs,
Right.
they brought in Ryan
and
Marker,
Ryan Marker,
yeah,
yeah, like, they're going to be very difficult to beat.
Okada.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
going to be very difficult to beat. If they're weak anywhere, it's not weak. If they're not stacked somewhere, it's probably in net. But you know what I mean? Like, that's not to say they have bad goaltending, because you have to get the puck from that team first of all.
yeah. I mean, if you compare it to last year, though, I mean, I'd probably put their goaltending tandem last year above this year, but not by
Yeah,
much.
me too. not by much. Yeah, but it wasn't their strength to begin with. Their strength is, I mean, they're just loaded with really good players. So,
I mean, for
and again,
anyone listening or watching, the Chaos right now is sitting first. Um, I think they pretty much have it wrapped up, but they're also a plus 84 with 142 goals scored.
yeah,
So
that's
it's a lot of
it's
firepower.
it's double what the Sting have in the East.
Yeah.
Now the competition level I think is a little different in the East. It's a little tougher, a little less wide open, a little more, little tougher checking. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We will see.
I mean, shit, they went up 3-0 last year in the finals and lost. So
No, they weren't up 3-0. They were up 3-1. They were up 3-1 because it was 1-1 after night. It was
that's
1-1
right. It was after DS. It was. They were up 3-1 and lost. That's what it was. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, and that was, I think, fatigue. And it's like, if we're going to open up some of the conversation, we have been discussing, and I don't know, a lot of it has to do with travel and TV schedule and stuff like that. But I've been pushing unsuccessfully for a couple of years the staggering of Sunday. Um, but there have been reasons we haven't done that. What I mean by that is I think we've seen fatigue there for a couple of teams a couple of times. A couple seasons ago, when the Demon Dogs came back, they were down 3-1. They came back and beat the Sting. It was fatigue that got the Sting. They had one goalie. They were missing a couple guys, and they were really running six players with a handful of people that got sprinkled in. And we saw that last year with the Chaos. They got fatigued. And it was just like, once the Avalanche started coming on Sunday, and there was no breather in between. There was no way. There was no time to stop and say, "Hey, we need to adjust." I think if you watched Game 6, they quit. Like, they just knew, hey, we have to keep everything in the tank for Game 7. It was a great Game 7. I mean, it was an incredible Game 7. And what PJ did shorthanded at the start of the second period was incredible. And you saw the sag after that because it was such a good game up to that point. But yeah, like I said, I think Vinny has got a taste for it this year, and he retooled himself. And I guarantee you Shaba will probably be at the finals if they come out of that division this year, and like he was last year. And like you said, they've got Marker on that team this year, and those other guys. They're going to be tough.
Yeah,
they're going to be tough.
Now we've talked a lot about PIHA, but final question from me. For anyone that hasn't experienced it, or maybe doesn't even know that there is a national championship if they don't necessarily follow PIHA, how would you describe nationals to someone who doesn't know about it?
Whenever anybody asks this, I always say the same thing. I don't answer it from my perspective. I love saying what Jay Bureau says to me every year. And now, and I say that because Jay has been everywhere. Everybody knows Jay. Everybody, understands that the amount of national championships his Black Ice teams have won. He goes to all of the tournaments, and he says every year to me, he says, "Flynn, this is my favorite event of the year," and that speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that rink is the single best one sheet facility in the country. And I get a lot of complaints from a lot of teams because I run the East. Why doesn't the finals come back East? Because I guess there's a burden on going East. And I finally, when I've been out there the last 4 years in a row. My team won the very first championship in that building in 2006. And we were wowed by that building back then. But when you go there and not only is it an incredible place, but that's where CJ and Charlie call home.
Sure.
And their job is to run the finals. I mean, all of the money that you're paying the league. I mean, everybody sends the Venmos to me or sends the Venmos to Gannon or whatever division you're in. I mean, all of that money is going to pay the referees. It's going to pay the rinks. it's putting a referee up in a hotel, that kind of stuff, pucks. But the money you're sending to the league, aside from overhead, and there's overhead, there's insurance and websites and that sort of stuff. But the overwhelming majority of that money is going into a fund for the finals, and they really waste no expense on that. I mean,
Sure.
when every team that goes there, and I go back to that again, there's a wow factor to the experience. I mean, they roll out the red carpet for the teams. There is a kid or a wife or a mom or somebody doing so many jobs that people don't know, and they set that up for weeks at a time. And it's kind of on, like, I don't want to say it's on cruise control, but it's like, hey, they just say, hey, like, it's time to go. And like, I see the same people every time, and there's people taking care of the people doing jobs there. You know what I mean? Like, there's food for the referees and food for the announcers and food for the people that are helping. Like, there's kids running, that are doing laps with the dust mop in between games, and there's the people that do the announcing there and run the music. There's like three people over in that score box at all times. Someone doing the score, someone doing announcing, someone doing music. And then there's somebody constantly going to the locker rooms and making sure they're clean. And there's sections. There's a player section where there's always apples and oranges and candy and Gatorades and water, and it's all there the entire weekend. Like, they call it a players lounge. And then obviously the video stuff that we've been doing the last couple of years to kind of showcase it and get it back to everybody else, and just the general environment, the enormous 150-foot screen with the graphics and the game streaming as you're playing it. It's incredible. It's and it's in a stadium kind of environment.
Yeah.
And then when you walk out of the rink, you're in one of the most beautiful places in the country. I mean, it's you walk out and you see these snow-capped mountains and these unbelievable views. There's plenty to do. There's great nightlife. It's not expensive around there. You know what I mean? You could get $120 hotel, and you're not in like a Motel 6. Um, you know, eh, Most of the teams are coming out getting really cool looking Airbnbs. Like, talk to Gannon. Like, anybody that knows Gannon, talk to Gannon about the house that they rented last year. I mean, it was like a McMansion.
I don't know. I
So
think the experiences, though, is you got to ask the trash pandas about their hot tub experience.
well, and when the Trash Pandas went out after they won, like, I went with them. We found this awesome beer garden, like outdoor, right at the base of the mountains. It's just an incredible trip. And like I said, I say, when the guy who's done everything in roller hockey says it's his favorite trip of the year, I think we should all listen. And go ask the mustache guys
Yeah.
who had their first year. They're going to tell you what an incredible experience. Talk to your brother, or talk to Gizzy or Eric Hirsch about their experience out there, and I'm sure how disappointed they didn't get back there last year, and
Sure.
how hungry they are to get back. And so, and again, it's a beautiful rink, it's full ice sheet, beautiful white still mat surface that doesn't get a lot of play. It's a special place
Yeah.
and a special event.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, between just watching the broadcast, I mean, that's another thing, right? Is you look at it and you go, what other rink can you put a broadcast like that in? There's not many.
It's all in house too.
Yeah.
I mean, as soon as you walk in, you'll see the broadcast studio right as you walk in, and they got a director sitting there the whole time cutting it up, and and then obviously we brought in a bunch of different people to call the games, and I think we've got a couple of additional people coming in this year, hopefully to make it happen. So it's a great event. I'm usually exhausted by the end of it, but it's worth every second.
Well, if I get there, I'm gonna hop on the broadcast whether you guys want me or not. So.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
But no, yeah. I mean, listen, I love the broadcast.
Dan, whatever keeps you off the keyboard during the finals is good with me.
That is like one of the funniest stories. As much as I just kept heckling, and my comment just kept getting deleted. And then my brother calls me and goes, Dan, what the hell are you doing? I got Flynn and other people coming down going, hey, tell your teammate to get off the broadcast and stop sending messages.
I mean, we can talk privately about that, but yeah, we knew exactly what you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But everyone was well aware of the situation you were bringing up. You know, everybody was on the up and up on that. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, listen, I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Unless you have more questions.
No, I think we've yapped for long enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody wants to see my ugly mug anymore.
Well, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. You want to talk about Flinner? Go for it. Go subscribe to the Spotify channel with all the previous season new episodes uploaded. I want to thank our sponsors, Lightning Rod Energy, 43 Degree Sports, and Chupacabra Sports. And remember, if you're forechecking and roller hockey, don't let up because there's no offsides. And I'll see you next time. Flinner, thanks for joining, man. Appreciate you.